Welcome back to DFC Books. Okay, so today we are attempting something, maybe something a bit reckless, actually. We're diving deep into this really unsettling collection of notes, manuscripts, scattered reports, basically the life's work, or maybe the life's obsession, left behind by this scholar, a very skeptical scholar initially.
Yeah, that's key. This isn't your typical fantasy novel we're dissecting. It reads more like a horrifying investigation, almost forensic.
Exactly. And our mission, our deep dive today, is to try and reconstruct this global ancient secret, something genuinely terrifying hidden right under our noses, using these fragmented accounts. We've got three main narratives, three different men, different times, different places.
All circling this one, a cosmic horror.
Right. We're threading them together. Feels like we're piecing together evidence from a crime scene, but the crime is cosmic.
And the original investigator, Professor Angel, it seems like it cost him everything. The core material we're looking at is his fragmented investigation into what he called the Cthulhu cult.
Cthulhu cult. Okay.
Yeah. And it was mostly pieced together after his death by his great-nephew, the guy who inherited all these papers and this, frankly, terrifying puzzle. So our goal here is to follow the breadcrumbs, right? Track the story through these three main parts.
What are the parts again?
First, the modern trigger, these weird dreams in this artist. Then the history, the actual cult stuff from the past. And finally, the actual contact, the really messy part.
And through all that, we need to understand who the key players are. Angel, Wilcox, LaGrasse, Johansson, and just how big this threat really is.
Exactly. Who are these people? What did they see? What does it all mean?
But before we even jump into the first piece of evidence, the source material itself throws down this gauntlet, this philosophical bombshell. It basically says human sanity is fragile. It depends on us not connecting the dots.
That's the opening line, pretty much. The inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents. We live on this placid island of ignorance, right? Surrounded by these dark seas of infinity.
And we're not meant to voyage far.
Precisely. The notes argue that if we actually manage it, if we piece together all this dissociated knowledge, the dreams, the cult history, the physical encounter, it opens up these terrifying vistas of reality.
Vistas? That sounds almost nice.
He means views into how things really are, and our position in it all, and the result. We either go completely mad from what we see, or we basically run screaming back into a new dark age, choosing ignorance over the awful truth.
So this deep dive, we're basically flirting with madness here, or at least trying to understand a madness that this scholar, Angel, uncovered.
Pretty much sums it up. We're trying to correlate the contents, the very thing the text warns us against.
Well, sounds like a good time. Let's risk it then. Let's unpack this chain of terror. First link. The academic himself, the guy who started collecting these disturbing threads. Professor George Gamble Angel, hashtag Clay the Catalyst and the Dreamer.
Right, Angel. He's our starting point, our anchor in, relative sanity. And like you said, he wasn't some fringe lunatic. This guy was Professor Emeritus of Semitic Languages at Brown University, Providence, Rhode Island.
So respected. Legitimate.
Absolutely. Museums consulted him. He was the authority on ancient inscriptions, cuneiform, that kind of thing. His credibility is super important here. It means we can't just brush this off as, some academic's weird hobby project gone wrong.
Okay, so a serious scholar. How does he get pulled into Cthulhu?
It seems to have been a gradual private investigation, but it all comes to a head, or rather comes to light, after his death. He died in the winter of 1926-27. Pretty old, 92.
Natural causes, then?
Well, officially, yes. The doctor said obscure lesion of the heart. Said he overexerted himself climbing a steep hill near the waterfront in Providence. Case closed.
Right. There's always a but in these stories.
There's always a but. The great-nephew, our narrator, who's piecing this all together, he notes the witness accounts. Angel collapsed right after being jostled, pushed, maybe by some shadowy figure, described as a nautical-looking Negro in a crowded area.
Jostled? That sounds minimal, but the description is specific, nautical looking.
Exactly. On its own, maybe nothing, an accident. But put it in context with everything else Angel was digging into. It starts to look less like an accident and more like, maybe a warning being silenced.
So the nephew inherits the papers, moves them to Boston, and starts digging.
Right. He's the executor of the will, goes through all the standard academic stuff, notes on languages, translations, yawn. But then he finds this one small, locked box, needs a specific key from Angel's personal ring to open it.
Okay, the classic locked box. What's inside? The smoking gun.
The seeds of it, anyway. Inside is this weird little collection, an old newspaper clipping, some very disorganized notes, not like Angel's usual meticulous work, and this piece of clay art. A small, rough bas relief.
The horror in clay from the section title.
That's the one. And this clay thing leads us straight to the next key character in this first act. The person who basically received the first signal, Henry Anthony Wilcox.
Wilcox. Who was he? Another academic.
Oh, completely different. Total contrast to Angel. Wilcox is described as young, thin, dark, neurotic and excited, an art student at the Rhode Island School of Design.
An art student. Okay.
Yeah. And apparently the respectable folks in Providence just thought he was queer, eccentric, odd. But Wilcox himself, he called himself psychically hypersensitive, believed he could sense things, feel things that others couldn't.
Sounds like the perfect antenna for whatever this is.
Exactly. Maybe that sensitivity, that queerness is what made him vulnerable or receptive to this transmission.
And the bas relief, the clay thing in the box, he made that.
He did. March 1st, 1925, apparently right after a small earthquake tremor hit the area. It's small, maybe 5 by 6 inches, rough, modern looking in technique, but the image.
Describe it. What did it show?
It's the first glimpse we get, really. It had these bizarre hieroglyphs around the edge, prehistoric looking. Wilcox claimed he'd never seen anything like them, and the main figure, well, the narrator struggles to describe it, says it's like an octopus, a dragon, and a human caricature all mashed together.
Octopus, dragon, human.
Okay. Pulpy head covered in tentacles, a scaly, kind of rubbery-looking body, claws, rudimentary wings, and behind it, this background of just impossible stone structures. Cyclopean architecture, the narrator calls it. Huge, non-human scale.
Okay, that's deeply weird. But still, it's just a sculpture by a self-proclaimed psychic art student, right? Could be anything.
That's what the nephew thought at first, and maybe even what Angel thought initially. But then comes the most important event for this whole first section, the moment that changes everything for Professor Angel. It's Wilcox showing up at his door, unannounced. March 1st, 1925, the same day he made the thing.
He just turns up. What happens?
He brings the sculpture, still damp, and he's agitated, excited. He tells Angel he made it the night before, right after that earthquake tremor. Said the tremor triggered this unbelievably intense dream.
The dream? What was the dream about?
Cities. Great cyclopean cities of Titan blocks and sky-flung monoliths, that's the quote, dripping with green ooze, radiating this sense of, cosmic dread. The scale, the geometry. It matched the background on his sculpture.
Okay, creepy synchronicity. But lots of artists have weird dreams.
True. But then Wilcox drops the real bombshell. The thing that made Angel sit up and take notice. The thing that connected Wilcox's weird dream to Angel's own obscure research.
What was it?
Wilcox said while he was dreaming of these nightmare cities, he heard something. Not a voice, exactly. More like a chaotic sensation, a mental impression of sound. And he tried to write it down phonetically.
And it was, don't keep me hanging.
The phrase was Cthulhu Fatan.
Cthulhu Fatan. Okay, that sounds unpronounceable. And familiar now.
Exactly. That phrase, those impossible syllables, that's the connection. Angel, the expert in ancient, obscure languages and myths, he presumably recognized something in that jumble, or it resonated with other fragments he'd collected. It suddenly validated Wilcox. He wasn't just dreaming, he was receiving. He was somehow tuned into this ancient, non-human signal.
Wow. Okay, so Angel goes from thinking weird kid, creepy art to, oh my God, this is real.
Pretty much. His academic skepticism starts to crumble right there. And being the meticulous researcher he was, he starts digging, trying to correlate. Is Wilcox alone? Is this just one guy's delusion?
And it wasn't, was it?
Not even close. This is where it gets globally terrifying. Angel starts collecting data, newspaper clippings, medical reports, and he discovers that during a specific period, March 23rd to April 2nd, 1925, something really strange happened.
What period was that?
That was the exact time Wilcox went from just having weird dreams to full-blown delirium. He was institutionalized briefly, screaming about some gigantic thing, miles high, completely losing it. And during that exact window...
Let me guess. Other people started having the same dreams.
All over the world. Sensitive people, artists, poets, the psychically hypersensitive, like Wilcox. They started reporting extremely similar, bizarre, terrifying nightmares. Dark, cyclopean cities. A giant, monstrous presence. A feeling of utter cosmic dread. It was like a psychic plague.
Okay, that's staggering. Angel connected all that. How these would just be isolated incidents otherwise.
That's his brilliance, or maybe his curse. He saw the pattern. He collected accounts. A suicide in London guy wakes up screaming, leaks out a window, some rambling apocalyptic letter from a religious fanatic down in South America.
Wow.
A theosophist colony out in California suddenly puts on white robes and starts preparing for some glorious fulfillment that thankfully never came, but they were all expecting something right then.
They were all tuned in.
Seems like it. And maybe the most concrete case besides Wilcox was this architect, well-known guy, apparently had some interest in the occult already.
What happened to him?
He went violently insane. On the exact day Wilcox's delirium started, March 23rd, spent months screaming about an escaped denizen of hell. And the clincher, he started making these frantic sketches that looked exactly like the cyclopean architecture from Wilcox's dream and sculpture. He died soon after.
So the rational world sees madness, coincidence, maybe mass hysteria, but Angel sees
A coordinated psychic assault. A signal being broadcast from somewhere and picked up by sensitive minds globally, leading to madness, suicide, terror.
And the nephew, reading all this years later, he must have been convinced, right?
You'd think so. But he admits, even after finding Angel's notes, the clippings, the sculpture, he's still clinging to what he calls callous rationalism. He still suspects Wilcox might have been a fraud, somehow feeding Angel information the professor already had, maybe subconsciously.
He needed something more concrete than dreams and art.
Exactly. He needed history. He needed proof that this wasn't just a modern phenomenon, that this Cthulhu thing had roots. And that proof, that's the older data Angel had been sitting on. That's the story of Inspector Legrasse. #Shag22. The tale of Inspector Legrasse, the historical cult.
Okay, so we're shifting gears. Back in time now, almost 20 years before Wilcox's dream, and we're moving from art studios and psych wards to police raids and academic conferences.
Pretty much. We're looking at the older matters now, the stuff Angel already knew that made Wilcox's Cthulhu tan hit him so hard. This takes us to 1908, St. Louis, the annual meeting of the American Archaeological Society.
Sounds dry. Lots of papers on pottery shards, I imagine.
Usually, yeah. But this meeting got interesting fast, because an unexpected visitor showed up, Inspector John Raymond Legrasse from the New Orleans Police Department.
A cop at an archaeology meeting. Why?
He wasn't there for the archaeology. He's described as looking totally ordinary, commonplace, middle-aged. He needed help, professional help from scholars to identify something he'd found. A weird religious artifact recovered during a police raid.
A raid. Okay, tell me about the raid. This sounds promising.
It was November 1st, 1907. Legrasse and his men raided what they thought was just another weird voodoo meeting out in the swamps south of New Orleans. You know, deep in the bayous, remote forested areas.
Standard weird swamp stuff for Louisiana, maybe.
That's what they expected. But what they found was way, way worse. Legrasse said it was infinitely more diabolic than even the blackest of the African voodoo circles. This wasn't just voodoo. It was something else. Something older, darker.
What were they doing?
Hideous rites. Human sacrifice, apparently. Chanting in this guttural, totally incomprehensible language around this big granite monolith hidden deep in the woods. They arrested a bunch of the cultists. Mostly men, described as low, mixed-blooded, and mentally aberrant.
And the artifact Legrasse brought to the meeting. The thing he needed help identifying.
That was the centerpiece of their ritual. He confiscated it. It was this small statuette. And the moment he presented it to the archaeologists, the whole room apparently went silent. Tense excitement.
Could it look like? Let me guess. Tentacles.
You got it. About 7 or 8 inches high, but the workmanship was exquisite. Apparently ancient, vaguely human-shaped, but yeah. Octopus-like head, all tentacles, scaly, rubbery-looking body, big claws, narrow bat-like wings on its back.
Sounds exactly like Wilcox's sculpture.
Exactly. Same creature. But this was clearly ancient, made of stone, not modern clay. And the stone itself was baffling.
How so?
Nobody could identify it. It was described as greenish-black, sort of soapy or waxy to the touch, with these little golden or iridescent flecks in it. It didn't match any known geology or mineralogy. Its sheer age was obvious, yet the material was alien, like it wasn't from Earth, maybe.
Okay, wow. So a weird cult, a sacrifice, an ancient, alien-looking statue? The archaeologist must have been buzzing. Did anyone recognize it?
One did. Or rather, he recognized something disturbingly similar. Professor William Channing Webb. Anthropology professor from Princeton. An explorer, too.
Webb. What did he know?
He said the statuette looked incredibly familiar. He'd been on an expedition way up in West Greenland 48 years before this meeting, so we're talking like 1860.
Greenland. That's about as far from New Orleans swamps as you can get.
Exactly. And up there, he encountered this isolated, quote, degenerate tribe of Eskimo, that's the term used in the text, who practiced this very specific secretive form of devil worship.
Devil worship, what kind?
They had these hereditary rituals passed down through generations addressed to what they called a supreme elder devil or Tornasuk. And the crucial part, they had this sacred object, a stone bas relief that Webb said was a rough parallel in all essential features to the idol Legras had just shown them. Same monstrous figure, same artistic style.
Okay, hold on. So the same thing is being worshipped, or at least depicted, by a swamp cult in Louisiana in 1907 and by an isolated Inuit group in Greenland back in the 1860s, using idols made of unidentifiable stone.
Mind-blowing, right? Suddenly, this isn't a local New Orleans problem. It's global, it's historical, it points to something ancient and widespread. But the real clincher, the most important event of this whole section, the thing that absolutely cemented the connection for Angel and everyone at that meeting, it was the chanting.
The chanting, what about it?
Legras, being a good cop, had made his prisoners repeat the ritual chant they were using in the swamp, and he'd written it down phonetically as best he could. Professor Webb, being a good anthropologist, had done the exact same thing with the chant used by the Greenland group back in 1860.
Don't tell him.
They compared the notes. Different languages, different continents, nearly 50 years apart, and the core phrase of both rituals was virtually identical.
What was the phrase? Was it?
Yep. Pingli milnaf Cthulhu arliganagafuftan.
Wow. The exact same guttural nonsense Wilcox heard in his dream decades later.
Exactly the same. That's the linchpin. That's the moment this stops being coincidence and starts being, well, evidence of a hidden, global, ancient reality. And they even got a translation.
Translation. From who?
From Legras's prisoners. One of them, an old mestizo named Castro, was considered the most knowledgeable, the most steeped in the cult's lore. He eventually broke down under questioning and explained what the chant meant.
Okay, what does Fingluim glonaf Cthulhu Arlai Weganag Vervan mean?
In his house at Arlai, dead Cthulhu awaits dreaming.
Dead.
Yeah.
But dreaming. Okay. That ties back to Wilcox's dream city, Arlai. So this Castro guy, he knew the whole backstory.
Apparently, yeah. And this is where Angel and later the narrator get the actual cosmology of the cult. Castro laid it all out.
Now wait, skeptic's hat back on for a second?
Yeah.
Couldn't this Castro just be making stuff up? Insane ramblings of a cultist caught red-handed.
Absolutely a fair question. That's the rational explanation, right? He's just weaving some crazy story to justify horrible rituals. But when that same crazy story, the same names, the same concepts show up independently in Greenland decades earlier, and then again in the dreams of a Rhode Island art student decades later, the he's just crazy explanation starts to wear thin, doesn't it?
Yeah, the corroboration is unsettling. Okay, so what did Castro say? What's the lore?
He talked about the great old ones, beings who came from the stars ages before humanity even existed. They ruled the earth, built enormous cities, remember Wilcox's dream, cities made of those cyclopean stones. Castro claimed the ruins could still be found on remote Pacific islands.
Great old ones. From the stars. Okay, what were they like?
This is where it gets really weird. Castro insisted they weren't made of flesh and blood like us. They had shapes, definite forms, but they weren't really matter in the way we understand it. Their biology, their physics. Totally alien.
So not physical beings.
Or maybe physical in a way our science just can't grasp yet, beyond our comprehension. And Castro said they died, in quotation marks, vast ages ago, but not really dead.
Right. Dead Cthulhu waits dreaming. What does that actually mean?
It means they're in a state of suspension, waiting. They lie awake in the dark and think, inside their great stone city, Arlay, preserved by powerful spells cast by Cthulhu himself, who's the high priest or leader, apparently. They're waiting for the stars to be right.
Waiting for some cosmic alignment?
Seems so. An astrological configuration that will allow them to break free and return. And Castro also explained how they communicated, how they influenced early humans, and later, people like Wilcox.
Let me guess. Dreams.
Exactly. Their normal mode of speech was transmitted thought. Telepathy, basically. That's how they planted the myths in the minds of the first humans. That's how Cthulhu reached out to Wilcox across the void.
But why did they stop? Why did they die and end up waiting?
According to Castro, their city, Arlai, sank beneath the ocean waves in some cataclysm ages ago. That trapped them, cut off the direct psychic link to the world. But the memory survived. Passed down through secret cults, like the one in the Louisiana swamp, like the one in Greenland. Their job was to keep the memory alive, keep the rituals going.
So the cults are like living archives waiting to welcome them back.
Precisely. And Castro even dropped a hint about where some of this lore might be written down, referencing the infamous Necronomicon.
Whoa, the Necronomicon, that forbidden book.
He quoted a couplet, supposedly from it. "That is not dead which can eternal lie, and with strange eons even death may die." Which perfectly sums up the great old one's condition, doesn't it?
Yeah, chills. Okay, so did Castro say when they're supposed to come back? What are the signs, besides the stars being right?
He gave a prophecy, a rather grim one. He said the time would be near when humanity itself breaks down, when we become free and wild and beyond good and evil, when laws and morals are just thrown aside and everyone is just shouting and killing and reveling in joy.
So total societal collapse and ecstatic violence is the signal flare. Lovely.
Yeah. The cult isn't just worshiping these things. They're waiting for, maybe even trying to hasten, the end of human civilization as we know it, because that's the prelude to the old one's return. Their purpose is to keep the flame burning until that time comes. Hashtag Chag3 now. The madness from the sea, the contact, and the truth.
Okay, so Professor Angel has the Wilcox dream evidence from 1925, and he has the LaGrasse cult evidence from 1908, stretching back even further with Webb's Greenland account. The connections are undeniable now, even for the narrator piecing it together later.
Right. The narrator admits the LaGrasse story basically proved Wilcox wasn't an imposter. The ancient cult knew about Cthulhu, Al-Raya, the chants. Wilcox couldn't have faked that. But the narrator is still trying to rationalize. He clings to absolute materialism, maybe hoping it was all just shared folklore, a myth that resurfaced.
He needed proof of physicality, something happening in the real world, not just dreams or old statues.
Exactly. And he finds it. The final piece of the puzzle. The link that connects the dreams and the cult history to a horrifying, tangible event. He stumbles across it purely by chance, a small, overlooked article in an Australian newspaper, the Sydney Bulletin, dated April 18th, 1925.
1925 again, right around the time of Wilcox's delirium and the global dream plague. What did the article say?
It reported the rescue of a ship. A heavily armed yacht called the Alert, found derelict and adrift in the remote South Pacific by a freighter, the Vigilant.
Derelict? What happened to the crew?
Only 2 people were found on board. One was dead, the other was alive, barely but completely broken, mentally shattered, and he was clutching something.
Let me guess. A small, greenish-black stone idol.
Bingo. An idol described as almost identical to the one Inspector LaGrasse found in the Louisiana swamp 18 years earlier.
Unbelievable. Who is the survivor?
He's the central figure of this final, terrifying section. A Norwegian sailor named Gustav Johansen. He was the second mate on a different ship entirely, the schooner Emma.
Johansen. What was his story? What happened to him after the rescue?
Well, he was taken back to Sydney, then eventually made his way home to Oslo. People who knew him said he was solid, reliable, sober and worthy, is the description. But the experience utterly destroyed him. His hair turned white overnight. He became withdrawn, terrified. He wrote down his account but refused to talk about it.
And he died.
He did, not long after returning to Oslo. Officially, it was heart trouble or maybe just street violence. But the narrator digs deeper and finds a more suspicious story. Johansen supposedly died suddenly after a bundle of papers fell on him from an upper window of a building he was walking past.
A bundle of papers killed him. That sounds convenient. Like Angel being jostled.
Exactly. It screams silenced witness, like the cult or something was cleaning up loose ends. Someone knew he knew too much.
So the narrator manages to get hold of Johansen's manuscript, the account he wrote down.
He does. Travels to Oslo, talks to the widow, gets the manuscript, written in basic English by Johansen, and it's the simple, factual sailor's log that provides the horrifying eyewitness account of what really happened out there in the Pacific. It's raw, unadorned, which makes the impossible things it describes even more chillingly believable.
Okay, so what did happen? How did Johansen end up on the Alert, clutching an idol?
His ship, the Emma, was just sailing through the South Pacific. On March 22nd, 1925, they encountered the Alert. But the Alert wasn't derelict then. It was crewed.
Who was on board?
Johansen described them as a queer and evil-looking crew of Kanakas and half-castes. Basically, a mixed-race group with a distinctly sinister vibe. Cultists, clearly. The modern-day followers making their pilgrimage, maybe.
And what did they want?
They ordered the Emma to turn back immediately, very aggressively. Captain Collins of the Emma refused. It's the open ocean, right? So the Alert, which turned out to be heavily armed with a peculiarly heavy battery of brass cannon, just opened fire.
A sea battle.
The desperate, brutal fight. The Emma was damaged, sinking. Johansen, Captain Collins, and a few others managed to board the Alert in a last-ditch effort. They fought hand-to-hand, killed all the cultists on board, who apparently fought like maniacs, but the Emma sank, and Captain Collins died too. So Johansen and his remaining men were left in command of the captured cultist yacht, the Alert, in the middle of nowhere.
Okay. And this is where the timeline gets really crucial, right?
Yeah.
The narrator connects these dates back to Wilcox and the dreams.
This is the mind-blowing part. Angel had already done some of this correlation, and the narrator finishes it. The dates line up perfectly to explain the global psychic disturbance.
Lay it out for me.
Okay. February 28th or March 1st, 1925. There's that earthquake and a big storm in the Pacific. Wilcox has his first intense dream in Rhode Island and sculpts the Cthulhu figure. At the same time, the Alert, the cultist yacht, darted eagerly forth from Dunedin, New Zealand. They were heading out because of the storm or quake.
Like it was a signal.
Exactly. March 22nd, the Emma encounters the Alert. The battle happens, the Emma sinks, Johansen takes over the Alert. They're now sailing the cultist's yacht, unknowingly towards the cultist's destination.
Okay.
March 23rd. Johansen and his men, following the course the Alert was already on, land on a previously unknown, uncharted island that seems to have risen from the sea. 6 of Johansen's men die horribly on shore. We'll get to that. Now remember the date, March 23rd. That is the exact day back in Rhode Island that Wilcox suddenly lapses into full delirium. And it's the day the global wave of intense, terrifying Cthulhu dreams begins worldwide.
Whoa. So the landing on the island, that triggered the global psychic scream.
It seems undeniable. The source of the dreams was now active, exposed. And then April 2nd, another massive storm hits the island area. Arlia presumably sinks again. And what happens globally? All the Cthulhu dreams stop instantly.
Right.
Wilcox wakes up in the hospital, completely recovered, with no memory of the past week and a half. The signal was cut off again.
That timing, it's impossible to ignore. It connects the physical event in the Pacific directly to the psychic events Angel recorded. So the most important event of this whole narrative, maybe the whole story, has to be what Johansen found on that island, what his manuscript describes.
Absolutely. Reading Johansen's account of landing on that island, that's the climax. He even recorded the coordinates: south latitude 47 degrees 9 minutes, west longitude 123 degrees 43 minutes, and what rose there from the depths, the nightmare corpse city itself, Arlia.
Arlia. Wilcox's dream city. Castro's sunken prison. It was real. What did it look like, according to Johansen?
His description is terrifying because it's so simple, so factual. He talks about ooze and weedy cyclopean masonry, massive stone blocks of unbelievable size, dripping, covered in slime, clearly ancient beyond reckoning, yet somehow wrong.
Wrong how?
The geometry. This is the part that breaks your brain. Johansen, just a simple sailor, he noticed it. He wrote that the geometry of the place was abnormal, non-Euclidean. The angles were wrong. He saw surfaces that seemed both concave and convex at the same time. Things that should have been parallel seemed to converge or slant away impossibly.
Non-Euclidean geometry. That's not just weird shapes. That's like the fundamental rules of space itself being broken.
Exactly. Imagine trying to navigate a place where distance, direction, up, down, none of it behaves the way your brain insists it should. It's designed to induce madness, to shatter your perception of reality. It's alien architecture in the truest sense.
Okay, so they're in this sanity-bending, slime-covered, impossible city. What do?
They explore cautiously. They find this immense carved portal, a doorway set into a monolithic structure. Johansen just calls it like a great barn door, trying to use familiar terms for something utterly alien. It's covered in carvings depicting the same tentacled monster.
And they opened it. Oh, no.
They did. Driven by curiosity or maybe some unseen influence? It was colossal, but they managed to shift it. Johansen notes it moved strangely, anomalously, in a diagonal way, defying normal physics again. And the moment it opened...
What came out?
First, darkness. A darkness almost material. And a smell. An utterly intolerable stench, ancient and foul beyond description. The smell of something vast and unclean, waking up after eons.
And then
It came out. Johansen's manuscript becomes almost incoherent here, just flashes of terror. The creature lumbered slobberingly into sight and gropingly squeezed its gelatinous green immensity through the black doorway.
gelatinous green immensity.
He struggles for words. The only comparison he can make is a mountain walked or stumbled. It was the thing from the idols, the thing from Wilcox's dream, the sticky spawn of the stars. Cthulhu, awake and loose.
Oh my God. What happened to the men?
6 of them died instantly. Some just dropped dead from pure fright. Others were apparently swept up or brushed by its flabby claws and just ceased to exist, basically. The horror was absolute.
But Johansen survived.
Pure luck, maybe? Or sheer nerve. He and one other man, Brighton, managed to scramble back to the Alert. They knew they couldn't outrun this walking mountain lumbering towards the shore.
So what did they do?
Johansen did the only thing he could think of. Brighton got the yacht under steam, and Johansen took the helm. Instead of trying to flee, he turned the Alert around and aimed it directly at the colossal gelatinous monster stepping into the water. He rammed it, head on.
He rammed Cthulhu with a yacht.
He did. He described the sickening impact, a sound he couldn't write down, and a sensation like hitting something neither solid nor liquid. There was a bursting as of an exploding bladder, this disgusting splash, and the creature seemed to disperse. It flew apart into this foul-smelling, blinding green mist or cloud that hid the sky.
He killed it.
That's what you would hope, right? But no. As the Alert steamed away as fast as it could, Johansen looked back, and he saw the green mist, the scattered plasticity, swirling, coalescing, recombining.
He's reforming.
It was pulling itself back together. It wasn't dead. It was maybe inconvenienced, temporarily disrupted, but it was reforming into its hateful original form. Cthulhu could not be killed by a yacht ramming.
So humanity was doomed. Except
for sheer dumb luck. Before Cthulhu could fully reform and presumably continue its rampage or fully establish its psychic dominance over the globe, that second storm hit, April 2nd. The storm swept over the island, the sea churned, and the impossible city of Arales sank back beneath the waves, taking the regenerating Cthulhu with it.
trapped again. Just as it woke up. Saved by the weather.
Saved by the weather, and one incredibly brave, or maybe just incredibly desperate, Norwegian sailor. The psychic signal cut off, Wilcox woke up, the world breathed a sigh of relief without even knowing why. #OV, synthesis and implication.
Okay. Wow. So let's pull this all together. The narrator, reading Johansen's manuscript, finally has the complete picture.
Yeah, the three pillars of the horrifying truth. You've got Wilcox, the modern sensitive, the artist dreaming of Arlai and Cthulhu, sculpting its image, chanting its name, all triggered by the initial tremor in 1925.
Killer 1, the psychic antenna.
Right. Then you've got Legrasse, Webb, and Castro, the historical evidence, the ancient global cult preserving the memory, the rituals, the chants, centered around that same monstrous figure depicted in idols found thousands of miles apart, dating back decades, maybe centuries or millennia.
Pillar 2, the ancient conspiracy.
Exactly. And finally, Johansen, the eyewitness. The physical proof. The sailor who accidentally stumbled upon Arlai itself when it briefly rose, saw Cthulhu emerge, fought it, and barely survived to tell the tale, his experience perfectly aligning with the dates of the global psychic disturbance.
Killer 3, the awful reality. Put them together.
And the narrator's callous rationalism just evaporates. There's no other explanation that fits all the facts. Cthulhu is real, Arlai is real, the great old ones are real. They exist, they came from the stars, they lie dreaming, and for a brief period in 1925, one of them was awake and loose.
But thankfully, trapped again, the storm, the sinking, it wasn't a permanent return.
Not permanent that time, but the simple, terrifying conclusion is, it happened once, it can happen again. And knowing this, it puts the narrator in immediate danger, doesn't it?
How so?
He realizes he knows too much. Just like his great-uncle Angel knew too much, just like Johansen knew too much. He starts looking back at Angel's death jostled by a nautical-looking man near the waterfront, and Johansen's death killed by falling papers, and they suddenly don't look like accidents anymore.
The cult. They're still out there, protecting the secret,
Yeah.
silencing anyone who pieces it together.
That's the chilling implication. The cult lives. And the narrator, by correlating all this forbidden knowledge, has basically painted a target on his own back. He ends his account fearing he'll go as he did, meaning meet a sudden suspicious end like Angel.
So let's zoom out. What's the big takeaway here? The cosmic horror synthesis.
It comes back to that opening idea, doesn't it? Our sanity, our whole worldview, it's built on a foundation of blissful ignorance. We function because we can't process the true scale and nature of the universe. Our science, our philosophy, it's all based on the tiny slice of reality we can perceive here on Earth.
And this story suggests there's vastly more out there, and it's fundamentally incompatible with us.
Worse than incompatible. Indifferent maybe, but its very nature is destructive to our understanding of reality. Non-Euclidean geometry, beings made of non-matter dreaming for eons, telepathic signals driving people mad. Our minds aren't equipped for this stuff. If we truly saw it all, we'd break.
And the cult, their role in this.
Their purpose is horrifyingly patient. They're not just worshiping Cthulhu, they are the custodians of the nightmare. They keep the memory alive, pass down the rituals, wait for the stars to align just right. They are waiting for the moment when Arlai rises permanently.
And when that happens.
That's the end game. The return of the great old ones, ushering in that age, Castro prophesied the world descending into chaos, madness, ecstatic violence, the end of human laws, morals, reason, replaced by the reign of these cosmic entities. The cult is basically working to facilitate the apocalypse.
So the ultimate horror isn't just a monster, it's the realization that our existence is precarious, dependent on factors totally outside our control, geological stability, astronomical cycles, and the fact that there are beings waiting for those factors to shift.
Exactly. The dreams, the statues, the whispered legends, they're all leaks from a reality far larger, older, and more terrifying than we imagine. Knowledge of it is the danger. Realizing that Cthulhu wasn't destroyed, just delayed, waiting for the next earthquake, the next alignment.
Which brings us right to that final chilling line the narrator leaves us with, the quote from the Necronomicon again.
Yeah, the perfect, dreadful summary. That is not dead which can eternal lie, and with strange eons even death may die. And then the narrator's own terrifying paraphrase. What has risen may sink, and what has sunk may rise. Loathsomeness waits in dreams in the deep.
So the only thing between us and that is maybe the seafloor staying put, or the stars staying slightly out of alignment.
Makes you think twice about those deep-sea tremors or weird astronomical news, doesn't it? What if the next little shudder is the one that sets the stars right? What if the dreams start again, but this time, they don't stop?
Okay. I think that's about all the cosmic dread we can handle for one session. A deeply unsettling dive. Thank you for navigating us through that forbidden knowledge.
Always a pleasure to contemplate the abyss.
Right. Thanks for joining us, everyone. We'll see you
Yeah.
next time, hopefully before RLI rises.